Hi everybody, it's Brett here from Metropole. Well, our property markets have certainly shifted up a gear in the last few weeks and they're starting to gain some serious momentum. But have you considered what will bring property prices to an end this time around, and how long will that be? What's going to happen over this property cycle? In the past, it's been interest rates being raised that's brought prices back down, or it's been tight credit restrictions and a tightening of credit that's really restricted people investing and people moving forward. That's brought our property prices to a halt. So will it be different this time? I think it will be. I think there's another factor we haven't probably considered and something that's outside of that realm. You may want to listen in because there's actually a way you can capitalise on this. So let's have a chat. First of all, I don't think it's going to be interest rates. Clearly, interest rates are at a record low, and that may be the obvious thing. But at the moment, the Reserve Bank's target is to bring inflation under control at around 2 or 3%. At the moment, it's in the high ones. The other thing the Reserve Bank has to do is maintain as close to full employment as possible. And at this time, coming out of COVID and lockdowns around the country, we're just not at that level yet. So it's going to be counterintuitive for the Reserve Bank to raise the cash rate at this time. So I can probably rule out interest rates. I think it will probably happen over the medium term, but definitely in this short term, it's not going to happen. The next thing we talked about was a tightening of credit. There's been a series of regulations brought in by the regulators over the last decade, probably from the GST, to really tighten and monitor the supply of credit. I don't think that's going to be the case either. I think we're really at the end of that cycle. Our Treasurer, Josh Freudenberg, just came out recently and mentioned that they may be softening that stance, in particular around discretionary spending. So there's a little bit of a softening of the stance. I can't see it going back to a tightening of credit at this stage, especially with the current economic environment. The third thing may be a Black Swan type event. We talked about the GFC, we talked about another lockdown, and you never ever rule those types of things out. There's always something on the horizon, especially every 5 or 10 years or so, that we have to watch out for. But this time around, I don't think it's going to be any of those things. I actually think it's going to be affordability. How much people can spend, how deep people's pockets are. Clearly there's some sunshine there, there's some blue sky ahead. So it's really going to come down to how much people can afford to spend and how they can afford to pay for property. So one thing I really strongly suggest you consider is monitoring wages growth. Clearly people with lower incomes, people who are just living with inflation, keeping up with inflation or keeping up with the average for a certain state or area, are not going to be able to spend as much money as people who have above average incomes, multiple streams of incomes. Their incomes are significantly higher and growing a lot faster as well. So for that reason, many experts have said it's probably going to last around the six months to maybe 18-month mark. Who's going to be right? Well, I think they both have the opportunity to be right, really, because I think these people over here who don't have those higher incomes, they're probably going to run out of money a little bit quicker, and that cycle's not going to be as long. Whereas the other people have probably got a little bit more to pay for property, they've got higher savings rates, they've got buffers, and they get emotional and pay a bit too much. So they're probably where you want to invest, guys. That's probably the lesson here. It's going to be affordability that slows this next cycle down. The longer and the deeper the pockets of the area you're buying in, probably the longevity and the more property growth you're going to get out of that particular asset. So my advice is to study weekly family incomes. It's something that doesn't change from week to week or month to month like many of the matrix and metrics that people look at. It's something that takes decades to change and something you should really have on your radar for this decade. Thanks for watching.